quick review before we put this very little piece into your arsenal or toolbox for interpreting and specifically translating. But before I get to the big thing I want to talk about, I just want to review, and I want to encourage you, please be reading along. I'm trying to give you in these videos the pertinent conversations that go along with the text. But number one, I can't do everything that the text has. Number two, I may inadvertently leave a few things out. So it's always good to be reading along in the text as well. I don't think there's much that I've left out, but along the way, you may want to keep the context of reading. And it's not a long, difficult read. One of the things I'm going to do in next week's module is we're going to slow down and take some time to work on, as we've really pushed through an enormous amount of material about the noun system, prepositions, your first couple verbs, as we've really kind of pressed into that. Next week is a very light week. We've got one chapter we're going to do for the entire week. You're also going to have a unit test over everything up to this point. But what I want to do after we cover the material in the chapter is I want to work a little bit on practicing translation. I haven't felt that it was worth the time. Number one, you didn't have enough tools to really focus in on it. Number two, I wanted you to struggle through the beginnings of that to kind of lay some foundation, and also to become aware of where the struggles are for you. And then next week what I'll do is we'll do just several little small videos where we throw some translation and some exegetical realities that have been covered in additional sections of the book as kind of enrichment sections, which we don't spend a lot of time on. But I'm going to go back and just kind of expose you to that, which I think will be helpful. Here's something I want to clarify in reference to prepositions. Number one, prepositions, as we said earlier, and I just want to reemphasize this, are not inflected. They don't change based on case endings. Their meanings change based on the case of the object of the preposition, what it's in. But the preposition itself does not change based on case endings. So you're not trying to match the preposition case endings with the case endings of the object. The only change that happens is sometimes we have an elision where the final vowel drops off. That's the only change you have. But that's not taking different case endings. You're not matching the case ending of a preposition, because it doesn't have case endings, with the case ending of the noun or the pronoun that it's connected to. Okay, so keep that in mind. Also, as we emphasize for the genitive and the dative, the key words of or to or in or with the dative as well, those key words are not translated when bringing in the object of a preposition or a prepositional phrase. Okay, so you don't want to do that. All right, now for today's conversation, we want to introduce the idea of a dependent clause. We have these all over the place in English as well. A clause is a section of a sentence or an expression that has both a subject and a verb. Now, the difference is a clause that is independent can have a subject and a verb, and they stand on their own. They're a complete thought, and you could actually make it a sentence. All right? Now, on the other side, a dependent clause has a subject and a verb, but it has something else that makes it less than a complete thought. It couldn't be a sentence, and it certainly can't stand on its own. Now, I have a surefire method to teach you how to discern the difference in English between an independent and a dependent clause. If, at the end of the clause, you go like this, that means it's a dependent clause. For example, after I finish this lecture, okay, I is the subject. After I finish is the verb. So it has a subject and it has a verb, but you hear that and you go, well, that's because it's a dependent clause. After I finish this lecture, I will, okay, you go like this. You need more information. All right, so on the other side of it, I'm going to go to lunch. All right, well, that I, in the subject, going to go is the verb to lunch. There you go. So there's a complete thought. That's, you don't go, if I just say, I'm going to go to lunch, you're not waiting for something else to make sense. Now, that's the same in Greek. And here's the thing that helps us. There are words that immediately set, like adding the word after sets up that that's a dependent clause. In the same way, we have words in Greek that set up and make it dependent. You've already learned one in your vocabulary earlier, the word hati, which can mean because or that. We have another one that's in this lesson, hina, which means in order that. All right, so when you see that, you know that you have a dependent clause. And there's going to be a verb that goes with it, and there's probably going to be a subject that goes with it, either expressed or implied. And now here's the important thing. The leading verb of the sentence can never be in the dependent clause. The leading verb of the sentence must always be in an independent clause. That's going to be hugely important to make translating easier, but also very important for interpreting a passage. All right. Hati, hina. Hina means in order that, which is a purpose clause. So when you see that, know that it's going to have a verb, but it's not going to be the leading verb of the sentence. So one of the things you want to do is begin to see phrasing in your passage, in your translation. Phrasing that will be, maybe there's a prepositional phrase, or maybe there's a dependent clause. There's maybe a independent clause. Well, there's going to be at least one independent clause in every sentence. So those are things, so you break them down. Keep the pieces that go together. A genitive is going to go with its noun, its head noun. A prepositional phrase is going to have a preposition and an object. So keep those, and when you break those down, that'll help you figure out, because weird things start happening in the language because you've got all of these different pieces and they're not in the word order that we're used to in English. If you can see where the phrases or the clauses are, it will help. This is for a dependent clause.